November 9th. It's 22 degrees. I'm hunting from a fixed tree stand. At about 5 minutes before legal hunt, a 4x4 whitetail buck moved through, and about 30 minutes later, I saw another deer moving in the same direction. I grabbed my bow. At this point, I realized it's a younger buck, I think a 3x3, and so I put my bow up. And this is pre-rut, so usually when there's one deer by itself and it's constantly steadily moving, it's usually a buck cruising looking for does. I've already filled my buck tag, and I wouldn't shoot this buck anyway, it's too young, and so I can only shoot does at this point. This is the tree stand I'm hunting from. It's almost 20 feet off the ground. It's about 15 minutes into legal hunt, and I've been watching two yearlings come down this fence line. One is clearly a spiked buck, and I believe the other one was a yearling doe. It's at the start of the rut, and so often yearlings will run together like this. And so I was all set with my bow to shoot this first deer as soon as the deer hopped the fence. It's at this point that I can see that this is not a yearling doe, but a little spiked buck. The spikes are only about 2.5, maybe 3 inches long. This deer is looking at deer at about 150 yards to the north, and actually that's where both of these deer are going to go, is join the other deer in the north. If you were looking at this little buck through a rifle scope at 100 yards, you would never have seen those little spikes. And sometimes these spike bucks do get shot by hunters thinking that they're does. I let both of these young bucks pass. They actually stopped on the other side of the tree. I would have had an easy 7 yard shot on both of them. November 14th, it's 38 degrees. There's variable wind at 6 to 8 miles an hour out of the west to the southwest, and there's scattered showers that have been moving through the area. I'm about 17 feet up in a climber. This is a 3x3 whitetail moving to the east. He actually moved on the west side of me about 15 minutes earlier. It's only 10 minutes into legal hunt, so I had to lighten this video quite a bit. About 30 minutes later, this 4x4 whitetail came directly out of the east towards me. I've already filled my buck tag. If it was the last day of season and I hadn't already filled the tag, I might consider shooting this buck, but next year it'll be a nice shooter. A lot of people do not know what a climber is. I went ahead and left my GoPro on as I was descending this tree, about a 17-foot descent. Basically, a climber, you clamp the base, move the top, clamp the top, move the base, and you can go up and down a tree about 2 or 3 times faster going down than it is up. You have to be in a tree without branches. This tree's already been groomed. I've actually shot a number of deer out of this tree in my climber in previous years. And I've already let down my bow by a full string. It's on the ground. Climbers are great for working your stomach muscles as you have to lift the base with your feet. So you get a nice little workout as you go up and down the trees. And now I'm at the bottom of the tree and safe and sound, ready to get out of the climber. It's a perfect morning for bow hunting. I have cloud cover. It's 22 degrees. There's a soft wind out of the south southwest. This is a spike buck, which I thought was a doe at first. Got little spikes about 2.5 inches, and I can only shoot does at this point. About 30 minutes later, I had a doe come straight out of the west, and although she didn't scent me, I think she saw my silhouette. There was some sunlight at that point, and she didn't snort or stamp her foot, but she was alert. And after about 5 minutes, she turned around and went back the other way. I had a shot on a forked buck a little later in the morning also. I was able to get in my stand 50 minutes before first light and noticed a silhouette of two forms just to the south of me, about 60 yards. That was this doe and fawn that we're looking at. About an hour later, 10 minutes into legal hunt, I noticed both the doe and the fawn's ears went up. Their heads are fixed to the east. Their tails are down, so that tells me that there's probably another deer moving in. And sure enough, it was a 4x4 buck that's coming in. This doe is no longer hot. It's after the rut, but the bucks are still looking for hot does. And I didn't think this would go very well, and it didn't. The buck tries to be friendly, but the doe and fawn scatter. I'm in a fixed stand about 14 feet off the ground on this steep slope, such that above me is only 10 feet above the level grade and about 30 feet below. And I'm watching a 4x4 whitetail buck to the north of me. He moved off a doe that I had a broadside shot on, but it was 15 minutes before legal hunt. So I wasn't able to shoot her, and unfortunately, this buck has chased her off. I had a 3x3 whitetail buck come in, and he's going to pass right underneath my scent line and didn't smell me. I actually had a 5 yard shot on him. The stand location gives a lovely view of the Bitterroot Valley. It was a nippy morning. I think I saw 7 or 8 different deer, one coyote, and one fox. I had shots on 2 deer, but one was before legal hunt and the other was a buck, and I've already filled my buck tag. November 30th, I got into my stand about an hour before first light, and I could hear deer all around me. There's a doe and a fawn directly to my south. This buck has been chasing them for about 10 minutes. That's the doe and the fawn, and the buck's getting ready to jump the fence. It's only 2 minutes into legal hunt, and this is only an 18-yard shot. It would have been an easy shot, but I already filled my buck tag. Fairly good sized buck. The doe and the fawn hung around for about 45 minutes before they ventured off to the east. The doe jumps the fence and the fawn finds a spot and goes under. I didn't know it, but this would be one of those days of a deer circus. I had deer in every direction throughout the entire morning. I was in my stand 3.5 hours, and I think I only sat down about 5 minutes. This is a yearling doe that came by me at Mach 2 from the east. I figured she was being chased by a buck, and he did show up about 5 minutes later. There's a group of 3 deer right in that area on the other side of the fence of that yearling doe. Here comes the buck in. He's chasing a doe.
He's grunting after her.
And he was grunting all the way. She wasn't interested and went off to the south. To make things more interesting, another buck is coming in from the west. So I have 8 deer within 50 to 80 yards of me right now. I was hoping the bucks would chase the does my direction, but instead they went west, and one buck kept pursuing. The other buck came back east and decided to bed just 35 yards from me.
Oh no. Oh. Bad, bad, bad.
You can hear my response to this from my GoPro that's on top of my head. And this is pretty typical the way deer will bed. The breeze is coming from the southwest and they're facing the northeast, so they can use scent to detect danger from one side, sight the other, and then they have their ears. So I couldn't move for almost a half an hour. He is bedded looking straight at me. This buck's head hardly moved at all for half an hour, but his nose went down a little bit, a couple times, and his eyes closed. And I think he got a little nap. This happened to me one other time bow hunting, and I had a standoff for 2 hours. So I was thankful this bigger buck came in and moved this younger buck out. This is an exciting morning for bow hunting, but the only doe that came within range ran by me pretty fast. Enjoyed the morning, but no shots. I'm in a fixed stand about 14 feet off the ground. I've been watching 3 does head towards me from the north, and they're 2 does are about 25 yards out to the northwest of me, but it's still before legal hunt. I don't have enough light to make the shot, and there are a few branches in the way anyway. And so the does start moving off to the east, which is their normal pattern. All 3 deer now have moved off the property I have permission to hunt, and they're on a property I do not have permission to hunt, so all I can do is video them. It's just now about legal hunt. You can pull off shots with the rifle and a scope and this light, but bow hunting, you have to have good light to be able to line up on the animal and put your sights on. So there's not much temptation to take early shots bow hunting. Here's a second and third doe. They come down from this area each morning like clockwork, and then they head off to the east to a bedding area. But they move early. Everything's over 10 or 15 minutes after legal hunt begins. It's a little slippery this morning. 17 degrees with heavy freezing fog, just a very slight breeze out of the west. I was able to get into my stand about an hour before first light. I walked in the dark and I was amazed that I didn't disturb a number of deer within 30 to 50 yards of my stand. I heard two sets of antlers clashing and I could see silhouettes in the dark. No does, but a lot of bucks. As a matter of fact, we had a buck parade today. The first one's been injured in the front leg. And this is buck number 2, followed by buck number 3. And this is buck number 4. They were doing some construction to the south, and as saws and so forth are going off, this buck got a little skittish, decides to do his morning routine. And this is buck number 5, which ends the buck parade. The whitetails moved through this location early, so I was in my stand a full hour before legal hunt. And on this particular morning, they moved through 40 minutes early, and actually a doe scented me. So that was the end of that hunt. Consequently, I climbed down from my stand just 30 minutes into legal hunt and started walking home. I spotted a group of 7 mule deer, does, and fawns on the way home. Notice their white rumps. They have a white rope tail, black tip, floppy ears like a mule, and they have a lanky walk. These deer are only 10 to 15 yards away from me, so it would be an easy shot with my bow, but the mule deer are protected in this hunting district. You have to have a special tag in order to harvest them. It's December 14th. I'm 17 feet off the ground on my climber, still looking to fill 2 doe tags with my bow. This is a yearling buck that jumped the fence, went up to the pond to get a drink. There's 2 other bucks on the other side of the fence that he just jumped, headed my direction, and there's a 4th buck that's outside the frame to the south or the left that's headed my direction also. The yearling buck crosses the creek here. This is about an 18, 19 yard shot. The weather forecast this morning was supposed to be 30 degrees with light snow, and it was 29 degrees when I left my house, but the time I got to this location to hunt, it was 40 degrees with some sprinkles in the air. So I took off a layer of clothes. The wind is about 8 to 10 miles an hour out of the south, which is the direction this young buck is heading. The other 2 bucks are headed to the east, and it's only a matter of time before this buck crosses my scent line. This is about a 18-yard shot, and he sniffs me right here. He kicks out to the north, about 30, 40 yards, looks around for a couple minutes, doesn't see anything, starts slowly moving back to the west. The other buck is now cautious too. They're looking around. He paused again for about 3 or 4 minutes and didn't see me, but they didn't want to take a chance, and so you can see their whitetails heading off to the west. Meanwhile, their 2 friends are wondering where they went, and they decide to hop the fence, and they're going to bed on the other side. There's 1 buck, a 5th buck, that's on the other side of this fence also. I think he's the one that's injured. He's also bedded. These deer are bedded for over an hour, about 40 to 50 yards from me, 3 deer. And they're facing my direction because the wind's out of the south, but there's a lot of trees in the way, so I was still able to move around. After an hour and no does in sight, I slipped down the tree very quietly, was able to walk away and then walk over to the deer and spook them. This is desirable because I don't want them educated into which trees that I'm hunting from. The last thing you want is deer looking up and trying to find you. Because of ministry obligations, I rarely can hunt in the afternoon, and this is my very first afternoon deer hunt all season. It's 32 degrees, there's light wind out of the northwest. There's a herd of about 30 elk to my northwest at 400 yards. To the south of me, I have 5 or 6 deer that are running all over the place. Sometimes deer will do this with the fresh snow, but there's actually a hot doe in the mix. If those don't get bred in the first rut, they'll come into heat again 28 days later, and 2 bucks are actually chasing a doe. I have a younger doe southeast of me about 35 yards, and she's right in my scent line, and she sensed me, and she gave a second snort, and then moved off to the east, and she's looking for me but cannot find me. She then moves back to the west just about the time a buck comes and is chasing other deer, and that causes all the deer to move back my direction. I'm looking hopeful to one of these deer jumping the thick. This is a 34-yard shot on a young doe, but duck hunters started shooting just as she's ready to jump the fence, so I didn't get a shot on her. Controlling scent is critical to good bow hunting, and so my hunting clothes stay out in the open air until I wear them, and I wash them regularly in a hunting soap to keep the scent down. 10 minutes after sunset, and I see a large doe heading my direction. I'm pretty excited because I have not had a shot on a doe in almost 7 weeks. I've had 15 to 20 shots on bucks, and my opportunities for does have been before legal hunt. But this is looking very promising as I have a doe coming straight into me. The doe is about 30 yards out now. I'm being careful not to move so she doesn't see me. As soon as her head gets behind the tree, then I'll get in position. And as soon as her head gets behind the other tree, I'm going to draw my bow. It's at this point that I realize I have a problem. I have no glow on my fiber optic sights at all. I'm moving the bow around trying to find the sight. And then when I line up on the deer, it's nearly impossible to get a steady shot. So she stopped and gave me a shot, and thankfully it was good. It shattered the shoulder, but the arrow hit about 4 inches forward of where I was aiming.
Okay, there's the arrow. The blood trail's extensive. I shot a doe last year in the exact same spot, and that doe only went about 90 yards. There's just blood everywhere. Yeah, this deer's not going to go very far, maybe 80, 90 yards. There's less blood now. I think she's probably getting close to being at the end. Oh, there she is.
The right shoulder of this doe is completely shattered, and the arrow went in and cut the aorta coming out of the heart, and that's why there was so much blood in the blood trail. This is a shot from the previous year that I mentioned. The 24-yard shot, and just perfect, right behind both shoulders, double lung shot. And here you can see the deer tumbling. To keep the histamine down in the meat, we usually do same day processing. After I take the hide off, I take a blade knife and shave off all the fat I can of the animal. That's where the gamey taste is at. And then I take a propane torch over the whole animal and zap any hair on it. This is the hamburger that came out of that doe. It was about 33 pounds of meat. In all my years of bow hunting, I've never seen what I did this morning. I got into my tree stand, which is about 14 feet off the ground, a full hour before legal hunt. There's a half moon, quite a bit of light, and the deer in this area move early. I have a GoPro on the top of my head and I'm looking to the northwest. The wind is directly in my face, just perfect. I have a group of 10 deer that are moving my direction. Several bucks in this group because I watched them spar, but I've already filled my buck tag and the season's closed on bucks anyway. Hoping to fill a doe tag. The first deer is a buck, and I can see that there's at least 3 or 4 more bucks following this first buck. Buck number 2, hoping to get a shot on this doe that's next to the fence line. And buck number 3, buck number 4, buck number 5, buck number 6, buck number 7, buck number 8. The doe and fawn are slowly heading my direction, but there's a road about 100 yards from my tree stand, and there are 2 walkers that are going down the road, and they're being pretty loud with their chatter, and that spooked all the bucks back my direction. And unfortunately, the doe and the fawn also jumped the fence and went east following the bucks. So I wasn't able to get a shot on the doe, but it was an incredible experience. I've never seen anything like this in all my years of bow hunting. I had 8 bucks come right underneath my stand at 4 yards. December 31st, I have one more doe tag I like to fill in the afternoon, and I have 4 deer coming in from the west. I've been watching about 10 or 12 deer to the northwest at 200 yards. The 4 deer popped the fence on the south side of me are heading in. I got a nice doe here. This is a quartering in shot, so I didn't want to hit her behind the shoulders, or I might get in the liver or the guts. This was a 20-yard shot, and I stuck her right through the heart. She only went about 50 yards.
She's down.